Welcome to all my fellow classmates. My name is John Barton, and this is related to COM 101, Unit 1, and it's the practice video area. And as you look further into it, you'll start seeing why it's very beneficial that we have a practice area, because I know I'm going to definitely have to use it quite a bit. Here again, this is the first pass at it, and so it's really just an idea of where this thing goes. I had originally done it in two clips. One was the narration of the actual video or the multimedia presentation, with the second part being more study notes and whatnot. But the time limitations are a little bit too great, so I've gone ahead and just cut it down to the one single clip. So with that in mind, we're going to do kind of an extraneous conversation related to what I posted as a written response to the discussion boards. So here we go. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to start. We're now in the main set room, and ideally this room should be a room that has the proper lighting, has a good control over the environment, avoids all the extraneous noises and other aspects. Now, unfortunately, due to the timing of this class, I've not gotten the lighting design done, so we can see a lot of brightness over in the couches over here. In the night time's even worse. So the room itself is going to take quite a bit of work. So now we'll go ahead and get started. This was what I started with on Thursday, June the 9th. Essentially, the discussion board was referring to a general set of actions that we're supposed to address, but it did not give reference to the audience style or the forum in which the public discussion was to be made. Furthermore, the terms of the audience was not defined in the course syllabus, so that's somewhat problematic, because more than a few times I've been told that an event would be a certain way, and then only to show up and find out it was completely different. So therefore, I've decided to take more of a generalized nature of this set of questions and look for, the more major aspects, and we'll spare all the other details to some degree. I will be going into some of the coherency techniques and whatnot further into this, but it's really more for me to use as a study basis than anything else. The first element of public speaking is the fact that there's generally a reaction that is triggered in all human beings when it comes to public speaking. We all get nervous. It's just a fact of our nature, and those reactions are composed of three major categories. One being physical, the second being verbal, and non-verbal is the third. So physical is when your hands start to tremble or your legs feel weak. And some people actually experience nausea in the case. And I've almost experienced that in some cases, close to it. Verbal is when you have a problem being able to communicate and you stammer or stutter. You're unable to formulate your words properly because you're so focused on something that you're losing your ability to control your voice. And then the third, of course, is nonverbal speech anxiety, which is shown in the way we have our nervous tics. If our eyes click a little bit, or our mouth kind of gets contorted and etc., these are signs of anxiety that's occurring as a result of public speaking. Now, there's nothing wrong with all of these. These are all natural functions, and everybody that's in this class will have, some anxiety. And anybody that does public speaking always will have anxiety. And there's some really good tests that are out on the internet that can give you a better understanding as to where you are starting from in the case of this. Now here, that's a great example of an extraneous interruption that disrupts a presentation. So obviously I had not controlled the phone ringing within the element of this set. So that's one mistake that needs to be fixed. But going back to our test, we run into a situation where once you understand a little bit more about where you stand as your starting point, and then going to the college success class that most of you guys have probably taken earlier in your curriculum, you defined in that class what types of styles are really conducive for you to work with, how you like to learn, how you like to communicate with other people, and how you like for them to communicate to you. So by having an assessment of your coworker in a couple of minutes of looking through that, we're able to actually look at the strengths and weaknesses of that specific person and find what is the best way to use the strengths initially to build some confidence in public speaking. And there's virtually every trick in the book that we can use. If a person's very good visually, they'd be great on preparing all the charts, and by their excitement and their affinity for it, they would be able to present those charts and graphs very well. Whereas another person may be very kinetic and likes to kind of make fun things happen in front of you. So those are very good ways of breaking open a speech or settling periods of inactivity where you need a little break to get the audience back into the mainstream of the presentation. So that addresses the first issue of the discussion board. The second issue is in regards to encouraging a coworker to participate in the presentation. And in my experience, finding some humor mixed along with a lot of hard work and developing a rapport that makes this more into a science rather than a public presentation really takes the edge off of it and allows your coworker to become more and more shall we say, oriented or adjusted to the fact that public speaking is a good thing, not a bad thing. And I had mentioned in my post of one experience I had, but when you're working with your coworkers, if you can throw out some experiences of what you really did wrong, like, wow, I really screwed this one up, listen to this, guys, then they start feeling, your coworker can start feeling as if it's okay to make mistakes. We're learning. It's a process, and so therefore we're going to play around with it until we finally reach a point of a sophistication that works for both parties, meaning myself and the co-presenter. So that's really the second issue on the discussion board. The third event ties into, or the third aspect ties into how one deals with nervousness, which is, we know it's going to happen. But there are many ways that nervousness can actually be your friend. It can be one of the greatest assets you've ever had if you learn how to channel it properly and to adjust your thought process into a very quick and clear, concise representation of the data you're trying to present. So what you can do is you can start using ways of building that anxiety and using it to funnel into productive dialogues as part of your baiting or your bull baiting sessions or your practice sessions, that gives your coworker that ability to overcome the fact that nervousness is there. Because once you realize that you're going to be nervous, then it's just a matter of how do you deal with the nervousness and how do you make it your friend and your ally instead of your enemy. So in closing, it asked us to talk a little bit of our past experiences, and I'm much older than a lot of you guys probably in the class, and I've spent about 35 years in corporate management and mainly involved with construction, and I've been involved with some, 2 or 3 50 stories and a couple of 60 stories, the Pepsi Center and lots of other things. So public speaking was, for me, for 35 years, something that we just did. It was part of the job. And you would always be out giving large presentations to audiences, to be it rather legal issues or cost issues or trying to obtain the next commission for the next job, which would be more of a sales impetus. So with all of that said, I find that any corporate executive, what separates the men from the boys is that their ability to speak publicly is really it. It makes you where you can conduct a business on the behalf of a large firm, or for yourself for that matter. If you're trying to sell your artwork to do a show at a museum, you're going to be asked to come in and give an interview and present your art and the reasons why it should be shown in their museum, and there's going to be a series of 3 or 4 others that are going to do the same. So your viability economically, as well as artistically, is related to how well you can present that publicly. And I gave another example of one that we had relating to Celine Dion over the Pepsi Center, which was a lot of fun. And if you can continue to give your coworker that encouragement, that guess what? If you figure out how to do all this and overcome and use the nervousness and find the strategies that work best for them, they can become very good public speakers and help advance their career and have a much more meaningful life for themselves and their family and their friends. So with that said, I'm going to close out this session in this room, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about coherency theory stuff related to this type of presentation.